being the fastest quarterback you've never seen. I'll be right back. There's no quicker way to get into DFS. Play Super Draft today and see for yourself.
We're behind. They're all fired up. What we got to do? First place, our defense has got to go out there and take the ball. Then when we get the ball, we got to have 11 people that's going to do their job and try to score every time you get the football. If we do that, we'll be all right. If we do that, we'll be all right.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Football University with me, your host, Matt Caddell, where we talk anything and everything football related, and we find a way to bring it back to the Bama Nation. RTR, we made it. We had 8A this weekend. We had a lot. We got NFL draft this week, so we're going to cover a lot of Bama, NFL draft, Bryce, Gibbs. We have a big session in store for today. So RTR to all the Bama Nation, 6-0, Cindy Reed, Roll Tide, Roll Tide, everybody, RTR. So let's start with our first topic, and let's talk about 8A. Let's just go ahead and discuss it. Let's go ahead and recap 8A. I want to say shouts out to you, the Bama fans. Let's talk about attendance. We know it's a great atmosphere at 8A. We're going to discuss the quarterbacks. We're going to discuss what impressed me, but I want to give an applause to all the Bama fans. I know we did not have 81,000, which I predicted, but we had 58,000, I believe 743, which was fourth in the nation when it came to spring games, but number one in the SEC. So listen, we still holding strong. So shouts out to Bama Nation. But listen, it was a beautiful day, Saturday, beautiful weather. But what really impressed me with the Crimson Tide A-Day recap is the freshmen. I thought the freshmen were phenomenal. We have a phenomenal class. Looking at Justice Hayes, I'll start with him on the offensive end. Jalen Hale, Dylan Lonergan, the quarterback, he looked pretty good for, him showing his natural ability as being a baseball player / quarterback. Although it was against twos and threes, he did move the ball. Eli Holstein looked pretty good. So it was very interesting. I was really surprised. And so Jalen Hale, the running backs, Justice Hayes, he had 3 TDs. To me, I thought he was one of the offensive MVPs. And defensively, you look at Caleb Downs. This guy looks like an NFL vet. Ed Reed back there. And so, you're looking at some Desmond Ricks. Those guys look really well. So what initially impressed me was the freshmen. I was like, these guys look phenomenal. Let me know what your thoughts are, but I'm going to go right in with my notes. And I want Bama fans to pump the brakes. RTR to all the Bama fans out there. I know people were saying that, Bama, the quarterbacks didn't look that great, had some turnovers. And we would discuss the quarterbacks. Trust me, that's what we do here at Football University. Hit that like, subscribe button. But listen, I will say this. Besides the freshmen, the team looked really good. They looked physical on the defensive end. I was excited about that. How it looked like, although the technical difficulties weren't the best, being on SEC Network Plus and ESPN Plus, I thought the team looked very good. Defensively, we were hitting guys behind the line of scrimmage, being physical. Pads were popping. Jake Pope, Justin Jefferson stood out. Jahad Campbell. I mentioned Caleb Downs, Malachi Moore. Defensively, these guys, Terrion Arnold, that secondary. The defense, we look good on both sides. We have a lot of depth, and we're going to need to have that SEC depth. So that's another thing that stood out to me besides the freshmen, but just how physically we were defensively. We were getting a lot of pressure on the QBs within a couple seconds. So I thought that was very impressive. So let's go to the student section. Jeff Stapleton has a great comment right here. It says, call me crazy, but I think the Tide's offense played the best defense they're going to play. Another thing, Saban's not showing everybody what you don't want to show, everything you have in the spring game. I mean, great comment right there, Jeff Stapleton. To your point, I do think Coach Saban was very vanilla. He's very strategic. I like how let's just talk about Coach Saban. I thought he was very methodical this spring, dealing with the quarterback situation. Not having the spring game sort of on these big networks, kind of going under radar, being methodical with showing, media snippets and things like that, not showing too much highlights. And so kudos to Saban. I think to your point about the defense, listen, kudos to this defense. One thing I think that's noted that defensively, our schemes are so much better with the leadership of Kevin Steele as opposed to Pete Golden. You look how we were physical at the line of scrimmage. We were rushing 4, sometimes 5 guys, having a lot of guys in the box, being physical, making a lot of tackles for loss, stopping the run, before running backs got ahead of steam. But yeah, it was so interesting to see about that defense. And I do think this Alabama defense, with the depth that we have at positions, you look at the secondary, the front 4, the defensive ends, we had some guys missing. We didn't play as many guys. It's important that we generate and continue to develop that SEC depth. To your point, Jeff Stapleton. So let's stay in the student section. What is this? Somebody said, "Go Dogs, Alabama 2020 title." Georgia fans, we know y'all want to feel relevant, so gonna come in to the Football University. We welcome all fans. Y'all are so funny. So we talked about the freshmen. We talked about how physical the defense, the SEC depth that we have. So let's talk about the quarterbacks. Since we've talked about it, everybody's talking. I mentioned Dylan Lonergan, and I mentioned Eli Holstein. Immediate takeaways looking at our quarterback situation. I do have some notes that I think, I thought both quarterbacks did really well. They looked confident in what they wanted to do offensively. But I do think I was encouraged. We still have a long ways to go. But I was encouraged, even though they had some ups and downs and some turnovers and things like that. But I will say I was encouraged. But I do think, since we're talking about the quarterbacks, and I do still think it's a 2-quarterback kind of system right now. Milrose, Simpson, I think it's going to happen organically. Somebody's going to take, whoever's going to take the next step with this offense. And hopefully both of them continue to improve, continue to work on their game. That way they continue to work on playing confidence and building that bond with the receivers. But Ty Simpson, Jalen Milroe. Milroe had some big plays on the ground in the passing game, but Milroe looked like, I thought both quarterbacks, like I said, I did say I was pleased with both quarterbacks, but they did look like they were kind of pressing a bit much at the beginning of the 8A scrimmage. Just a tad bit, but I like the first play action play pass for Jalen Milroe, and we took a shot deep. I like that confidence. I like the savviness, of the energy that Tommy Rees call plays for his quarterback to really surprise that defense. But I do think what's important for these quarterbacks, I mentioned they have to continue to work on their craft. I think that they do need to find a way to continue to build rapport and get better rhythm with the wide receivers. I'm going to talk about it. They need to continue to work on their game, work on their craft, but work on rapport with their receivers. And receivers, I feel like the receivers need to take a step forward and improve. So they need to work on their craft as well. So let's go to the student section. Let's see. We got a few comments. Let's see. Who is your pick for QB after seeing 8A? Oh, man, I'm still kind of torn between the two. I mean, I like Ty Simpson. I'm going to tell you the advantages of Ty Simpson, what I noticed in the spring game. Ty Simpson, he seems to better to process the offense, what the defense is trying to do. He has a little bit better, more anticipatory. He's anticipating things a little bit better. He handled the pocket as far as getting pressure, knowing where pressure was coming. I mentioned the processing of information. He was able to be in the pocket a little bit better as opposed to Milroe, and I'm going to kind of go back and forward, pros and cons. But Milroe, he gives you the legs, the explosiveness on the ground. But listen, Ty Simpson, credit to him. He made a move to get a key first down on Earl Little. And we'll talk about how dynamic of a defensive player Earl Little. So right now, to answer your question, Lori, Caddell, I believe it's still a two quarterback type race. But if I had to pick one, I might take the edge to Milroe just because he has the experience. But I wouldn't be surprised if Ty Simpson gains momentum between now and training camp. So it'll be interesting to see. So let's stay in the student section. Jeff Stapleton says Ty will be our quarterback. Yeah, since we're talking about Ty, I mentioned how I thought between the two, he processed information a little bit quicker, coming for Bryce, who's, we mentioned Bryce, how, he should be the number one pick and how he processes information quickly. And looking at this 8A game, looking at the two, comparing Milroe, Ty Simpson, I'm going to have to say I believe Ty Simpson processed information a little bit quicker with more of a sense of urgency. I felt like Milroe, sometimes when the pressures weren't there, he looked a little anxious or a little he didn't manage the pocket the best. But between the two, another thing that Ty Simpson showed me, I mentioned his pocket awareness. I think he had a little bit better timing with the quarterbacks. With the receivers. I think he had a little bit better timing, and he has a little bit more advantage when it comes to anticipation, finding different windows for receivers or different types. So I think his timing, his being able to process information quickly, what the defense is trying to do, and managing the pocket with pressure, I'm going to give Ty Simpson. But Ty Simpson has some critiques. He did have the interception, but let me give Milroe what he needs to work on. I think this is essential. Milroe, if you're turning into football university, I got some things to work on. A, work on your poise. I think you need to work on when the defense is coming, stay calm. Like Bryce. Bryce seemed to always stay in control, like he always knew what was coming, his preparation. So, even when you're getting this pressure, Milroe, continue to work, stay cool, calm, collected, poised, knowing how to continue to develop in that area. That way, I think you can continue to play with confidence. Even when defenses throw crazy blitzes or pressure at you, you're still able to make a great throw a great football winning play. So continue to work on your poise. Another thing I noted about Milroe, I think he needs to continue to improve on his anticipation. And I say anticipation, the defense, what they're trying to do, different types of throws once you get pressure. So that's another area I want Jalen Milroe to improve on. I mentioned poise and anticipation, and I think he needs to improve on just processing information, like knowing what the defense is trying to do, being able to not only see it, but recognize it quickly, being able to anticipate it a little bit earlier. That way he becomes a little bit more prepared for those tough situations. So those are things I think Milroe needs to continue to improve and develop: poise, anticipation, processing information. And I think if he does that, that's going to help his pocket awareness, where he'll be more calm, like a Bryce. He's be able to evade pressure, seeing it ahead of time, and really to be able to distribute the ball. And another thing, because I felt like during the game, he felt a bit rushed initially. Early, he eventually got it rolling, later in the 8A scrimmage, but he felt a bit rushed. And I think it's important that Jalen Milroe continue to work on your QB mechanics. I'm saying that working on your arm angles, getting the ball out quickly, having, good ball placement. I think that's something that he can work on, knowing where he needs to throw the ball, where he needs to place the ball for his receivers. That way they can catch the ball. If the receiver's running the seam and he's got, middle field safety, you probably need to work on your ball placement, put it on the outside away from the defender. Now, I think if Jalen Milroe continues to work on poise, anticipation, processing information, and accuracy and ball placement, I think the sky's the limit for Milroe. So let's go back to the student section. Thank you for those comments. Right now, if I had to pick a QB, why? Woo! Man. Oh, you're putting me on the spot. Excuse me. I think I'm going to go with Milroe just because he has the experience. I think right now, the team, that locker room, it's kind of a Jalen Tua situation almost, where Jalen Hurts, he had the locker room, but they knew how great of a backup Tua was, and they initially didn't have a problem with going that way. So I think if we had to start the game tomorrow, Jalen Milroe probably get the nod just off experience alone. But Ty Simpson is coming. I'm telling you, I mentioned his pocket awareness, his being able to decipher what the defense is doing, anticipating the defense, managing the pocket pressure, managing blitzes a little bit better, evading pressure, and still keeping the play alive. Ty Simpson has some advantage. So I think it's important for Ty Simpson to continue to work on his game, get the ball, make better passes, make better to continue to develop and play with confidence. So let's stay in the student section. Great comment. And yeah, Bama's defense, I told you how physical our defense is. They are cruel and nasty. And that's what I love to see with the leadership from a Coach Steele, Coach T-Rob, Coach Saban, Robert Balla, Freddie Roach, Coach Holzer. You got Bama guys that know how to be physical and have good defensive schemes. And I was glad to see what we have. And listen, we got some players: Justin Jefferson, Jahai Campbell, Travis Marshall, Sean Murphy. Those linebackers, Justin Jefferson, this guy, he could be Weapon X. I mean, he kind of reminded me of a young Patrick Queen when LSU had that run with Joe Burrow and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That defense, Patrick Queen was able to just come in late in the season, and he was a matchup problem. He was able to cover running backs, physical enough to stop the run, cover tight ends, cover receivers. He could do it all. And I think Justin Jefferson has that type of ability and will be integral for our defense. So let's stay in the student section. Joe Saban says Ty made plays and make people miss. So yes, he does. Those are some of the bright spots. We talked about the freshmen. We talked about the quarterbacks. I still think it's important that Milroe and Simpson continue to develop, and importantly, continue to develop rapport, rhythm with the receivers. So that brings me to the other side of the things of the A that were not so impressive. And it brings me up to the receivers. And so I'm glad 6-0 brought us to this next question. Matt, do you think our receivers managed to get open soon enough for the quarterbacks to show what they got? I think our receivers did come out a little sluggish, that I go back to Miro in that first play action play. I mean, he breaks out, play action, fakes it, throws up. He has Isaiah Bond open on a corner, but it looks like they were kind of still off a little bit towards the tail end of the route, because where Milroe put the ball, I believe, is where Isaiah Bond needed to be in order for that play to be a touchdown. So I still think there's still some type of, I don't want to say lack, but I still think there's some opportunity for us to continue to grow in that camaraderie, in that relationship, in that rhythm, and have great rapport where, listen, I don't care who the quarterback is. They know when Bond makes this cut, that ball needs to be there at this time. Like, they need to continue to develop that rhythm, that rapport with receivers. So I do think, to your point, 6-0, the receivers were getting open, but I still think it's always improved. The thing that for me was big disappointing for the 8A game, it was too many drops. I'm sorry, as a former receiver, my experience playing in Alabama 8A, playing in front of the crowds, that's an opportunity for you to make a name for yourself. So I remember catching touchdowns in spring game, Coach Saban's first year, the 92,000. You want to make plays. That's how you get on the field. Coach Saban preaches one to play winning football. At the wide receiver position, we need to be playing winning football, and winning football by catching the ball, like having great rapport with our quarterbacks. And I think if we do that between here and training camp, that's what's going to help take our offense to the next level. So thank you for that comment, 6-0. Listen, Stapleton, you're on it, man. Listen, like I said, Miro looked like he had last two. He did have a couple interceptions, but like I said, I just didn't think he was managing the pressure at that time. Being able to process information quickly, anticipating things. And I think it calls, when he wasn't doing those things, I think it calls for having bad poise, being a little anxious in the pocket, and not having the anticipation or the accuracy on certain throws. So I think those are important for things for Jalen Milroe to do. So we got a lot of RTR. Shouts out to Spencer, Todd, and Jeff. So let's transition. Let's talk about another thing. So I mentioned the wide receivers. I mentioned both quarterbacks. Let's shout out to the offensive line. Let's talk about the offensive line and the defensive line. They were very physical. I mean, the first offensive unit, the second offensive unit, they were very physical. And I really like the physicality our defensive line had all across the board. We were going after the quarterback, trying to stop the run. So I love the physical mentality, the attack mode mentality up front, getting back to playing bully ball and physical. And our offensive line is huge. Man, those guys are huge. We got about 8 or 10 guys we can rotate. So I still think we're still filling out, the offensive guys, but the set. But, Coach Wolf, his leadership, it can be week by week. But I think it's important we continue to have depth at the offensive line and defensive line. But I was very impressed by them. So let's get to my next topic. And, just talking about 8A, playing with those guys, I think it's important that Alabama football team and players and position groups, I think it's important that they continue to build continuity as a team on the field as well as off the field. And I say that I mentioned the quarterbacks need to work more with the receivers. The receivers need to work more with the quarterbacks, and the receivers need to work on their craft, work on the jugs machine. Somebody needs to take some type of leadership and say, listen, guys, we got to get back to playing that Alabama receiver standard. No more drop balls. Let's push each other. Let's work on our hand-eye coordination. Let's work on our routes. Let's work on our footwork. Let's work on, catching the balls with these receivers. That way we can have better rhythm and better rapport. So if we take advantage of this continued development and building continuity before training camp, just imagine how far along our team and offense will be. So I want the team to continue to have continuity and continue to build out this team, because I think we have the toughness, the spirit, the leadership. We just got to continue to improve as a team, each individual player and as position units. And I think that's what's going to help us in the long run. Matt, do you think a transfer quarterback can win the team over Jalen and Ty? I'm going to say no, Spencer, to your question. I don't think we need a transfer quarterback. I think I like our quarterback room the way it is itself. I think we have a lot of talent, and I think Coach Saban's going to let it happen organically. Somebody's eventually is going to, have a practice where they, have the rapport, making the decisions. They're getting more reps. It's starting to click. He's distributing the ball. So I don't think Alabama needs to get in the transfer portal. To me, I'm speaking of the transfer portal. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It just feels like once you get in the portal, it's weird. Like, I feel like you lose the shine off of, who you are. I get it if you graduate or whatnot, but, I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think we need to go to the quarterback portal for looking for a quarterback, because you're not going to win the locker room. I think the locker room is set with the leadership, the coaching style, Tommy Rees, Coach Saban. Everybody's looking at Milroe and Simpson, and so one of those guys is going to be the quarterback. 6-0 says Ty Simpson had issues with his thumb. I thought he did, but if he did, he fought through it. So that might show what type of competitor he is. Like, Ty Simpson looked good. Dylan Lonergan, I mentioned him, he looked good. So those guys, look really well. So I don't think we need a quarterback from the transfer portal. And while we're talking about kids jumping in the portal, I know we had guys and we have transfer portal. Listen, sometimes, the good book, the Bible preaches about patience. Sometimes you need to have patience and be able to endure and persevere, some type of adversity, because that's what life is. That's how you grow, you continue to improve. So I just want to say that out there. If we got any young kids out there, continue to don't be so quick to run from competition or any little challenges you might have. Continue to embrace, acknowledge them, embrace them, but, work on overcoming, have patience, have perseverance, because that's going to show what type of character you have in life. So that's what's going to help you. So I just want to get that off my chest. So let's go to my next topic. When in regards to 8A, we mentioned, another thing, and I'll cover this. I know I'm talking about 8A. The tight ends. Listen, the tight ends were used more. I think we had like 5 tight ends with at least double-digit catches. The tight ends were used more. Shouts out to Tommy Rees. I think this guy's an offensive genius. He brings a lot of energy, a lot of new thinking. I think Tommy Rees is the guy for us to get back where we need to be offensively. And so the tight ends, being able to use those guys, get easy throws, that's only going to help our offense, because this is what we do at Football University. We really break it down. That's what's going to help up our offense and really open up so many different dynamics of our playbook. Being able to attack the middle of the field with the tight ends, or just utilize tight ends to get quick throws to really, help teams, have to honor and defend in space. And then it opens up our running game. It opens up our play action. And it opens up outside play action. So I was glad to see our tight end being utilized. So, and I mentioned how it. I mentioned the dynamic freshman Justice Haynes. So before I get to my next topic, let's go to the student section. Wow, y'all are rolling today. Oh man, you went right to it. Burton needs to calm down. He could be a really good receiver, but he's so cocky. Listen, I think not only Burton, I was kind of disappointed to see the amount of drops that we had offensively from a receiver. Me being a former receiver, I'm playing with Tyrone Prothros and Keith Browns and DJ Halls, where we took so much pride in catching the ball, continuing to work on our craft, and to see the amount of drops still, Burton's been at Alabama. I'm like, what are you doing in your off time? Like, are you really working on, your handout coordination? For me, I was one of those players, that, while other players were asleep, I was working. I had that type of mentality, especially when Coach Saban got there and instilled that confidence, in me. And it's like, Matt, you got it. You can go. I need you to be that dog. I was like, oh, I'm going while y'all sleeping, whatever. I'm going to the complex and working on breaking off routes. Coaches, you need to become gym rats. And I think it's important that our receiver room, we need to be gym rats. Staying there, I say gym rats as in staying in the gym, aka the football field. We need to be field rats, working on our routes, working on our handout coordination, working on catching the ball, different angles, looking the ball in. I think we have a for the drops, it looks like we're not actually pinpointing the ball and looking it in. So, not only Burton, I think Burton needs to continue to work on his craft as well as all other receivers. I mentioned earlier, somebody needs to take the leadership role and say, listen, we're going to play receiver standard that we have. That way we make Devontae Smith proud and Jalen Waddle proud and Jerry Jeudy proud and Amari Cooper and Calvin Ridley. We make all those NFL guys proud. So I think, to your point, Joe Saban, listen, Burton as well as other receivers need to step their game up. So let's run to a few more comments. Somebody said Burton's still feeling that hit, and he's talking about that hit from the dynamic freshman Jake Pope out of Buford High School. I mean, it was a beautiful play. Actually, the quarterback threw a great ball, but Burton was juggling it, tossing it up in the air. And I love to see the physicality of our defense, how Jake Pope, the freshman out of Buford, came in and was physical and dislodged the ball and made sure that he separated the ball and him in a clean way. So that's the hit that Jake Pope had there. Spencer says, take the receivers to the batting cages with gloves. Listen, they don't need to be too glove dependent. At the end of the day, your gloves ain't gonna be able to make all the catches. You need to have good hands. That's why I say work on catching the ball. I need my receivers. For me, like, I continue to develop on my receiving abilities. I wouldn't have all the best hands. I wasn't like Moss, but I continue to develop, I continue to work. So when my time came, I was able to step up in clutch situations and catch the ball in defenders' faces, being able to not see the ball but still catch the ball. So you have to continue to develop. And so all the young receivers out there, continue to work on your craft. This is from me here, Matt Caddell, Football University. So let's go to my next topic. While we're here in the student section, we do not, William Bryant, we do not need a quarterback from the portal. So we talked about A-Day and all this good stuff and the players and the receivers. Let's shift gears. Happy NFL draft week. We have made it to the NFL draft. And like I said, I still think the draft is the Bryce Young Invitational. And we're going to start with Bryce Young. And I got some amazing notes. Like I said, this is going to be an action-packed show. So it's draft week. Bryce Young, I think it starts with Bryce Young. I think he deserves to be the number one pick. I think he is going to be the number one pick. And from what I've seen from the excitement from Charlotte, North Carolina, the Panthers fans, they are excited to have a new era in Charlotte with Bryce Young. And with that excitement, you know how Bryce Young gets the Steph Curry comparison. We know Steph Curry is a big Carolina Panthers fan, so Curry might make the phone call. I mentioned last week, I think Steph Curry is in Bryce Young corner, as well as Steve Smith. And I'll pause right here. I mentioned the Teppers, the owners, I think, are in Bryce Young's corner. And besides Steve Smith, Luke Kuechly, I think he's the linebackers coach for the Carolina Panthers. I think they had a lot of talk. I think he's team Bryce Young. So I think right now with that momentum, Bryce going to Carolina and Bryce having the Steph Curry comparisons, and he is a point guard on the field, I think it's important that the Carolina Panthers build out this offense build out this team like the Golden State Warriors did for Steph Curry. If Bryce Young and Steph Curry, you need to build the Carolina Panthers like the Warriors. And I say that by the first way to build the team like the Warriors, you need to find his Klay Thompson. You look at the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry, Klay Thompson's, the Splash Brothers. They are two marksmen. They can shoot the three. I think you need to find Bryce Young, a Splash Brother. Either that's a receiver, that's either a Zay Flowers in the second round, or it's so many receivers. Maybe you can find a Jamison Williams. We heard the news about Jamison Williams this past year. He's going to be suspended 6 games or whatnot. But does the Detroit Lions maybe go? They have 2 picks, 6th and the 18th pick. Excuse me. Do they go after a receiver with that pick and maybe trade Jamison Williams to maybe a Carolina Panthers? I did see some rumors that maybe Bryce and Jamison are trying to work to get on the team. But I say all that. Bryce needs his Klay Thompson. He needs his Splash Brother. He needs a receiver. I know he has Adam Thielen, but if you can get him another like a Zay Flowers, man, that could be damaged. And I think not only did you get him just a receiver, get him a tight end. Maybe get him a Washington out of Georgia or somebody, or Carlton Kincaid, to really have that offensive splash that where Bryce can be like the Warriors and the Carolina Panthers can win the division. So that's what Bryce Young needs. He either needs 2 receivers or a receiver and tight end. You look at the Warriors, Draymond Green, he's the hothead. He got suspended. It's nothing new. But Draymond Green is there for defense and rebounding. So I think the Carolina Panthers have the Draymond Green aspect, but they need to continue to be dominant on the defensive end. That way, Bryce has a good enough defense to win the division. That's another point to get Bryce to be like the Warriors. This is what we do at Football University. And also, he needs to have a good run, a good offensive line. His Jordan Poole or his running back, a really good running back. Maybe you give him a Gibbs or Todd Spears. You help that running game. That way you don't put so much load on him. That I think those are 3 or 4 key points that if I'm the GM for the Carolina Panthers, and Bryce Young is my Steph Curry, and the Warriors won 4 championships by building out those things. I think the Carolina Panthers need to build out the Panthers team like the Warriors. So it's a lot of excitement going up there in Charlotte. So let's go in the student section. Let's see what everybody's talking about. I believe our quarterback room. Oh, so this brings me up to my next point. Then I'm going to pause on Bryce. And I'm glad you brought this up, 6-0, because this is in my next point. about Jahmyr Gibbs. So let's answer this question first, Six. So Dallas Cowboys on Bijan Robinson be their running back. Any truth to that, or why not Jahmyr Gibbs? I think the Cowboys have maybe the 26th pick. I don't believe Bijan Robinson will be on the board at that time. I got Bijan Robinson coming off the board about 8. Coming off the board about 8 or 9. I think that's when the sweepstakes for Bijan Robinson come off. But the Cowboys could be Iron Gibbs. And that brought me up to my next point. Excuse me. And you know how I said that here at Football University, Bijan Robinson is my 1A running back, and Jahmyr Gibbs was my 1B running back. But rumors have been rumbling around that maybe Jahmyr Gibbs is actually the better running back over Bijan Robinson. Now, I have heard that argument, and I wanted to discuss it. Like, is Gibbs really the RB1? And I took a few notes. Excuse me. I'm getting choked up discussing it. So I did take a few notes, and I'm going to take it like this. Advantages that Jahmyr Gibbs have over Bijan Robinson. We know Bijan Robinson, the stellar running back out of Texas. We played him in that game. But outside of that Texas game, Bijan Robinson was successful. But I feel like an argument Gibbs has over Bijan Robinson is his opponents. I feel like Gibbs, being in the SEC, was going against tougher defenses in the SEC this past year, as opposed to Bijan Robinson. Yeah, he went against Bama's defense, but that's maybe 1 week. Whereas Jahmyr Gibbs can have the argument of being that number 1 running back because of the level of competition going into Death Valley, playing against Ole Miss, playing against LSU, playing against Tennessee. Like, he has been playing against Arkansas. I mean, Drew Saunders is going to be a first-round pick. He's played against him, and he rushed for like 200-some yards. So, listen, I just wanted to say, it's some thoughts out there. Maybe Jahmyr Gibbs is actually the true number 1. And I say that, and another advantage he might have a little bit better vision than Bijan Robinson. Like, Bijan Robinson has it, but you look at Jahmyr Gibbs, his style, his vision, his patience, his being able to make people miss in the open field goes to show you that some boards might have Jahmyr Gibbs coming off before Bijan Robinson. But this is what we do here at Football University. It's going to be interesting to see. Cindy Reed says, rumor has it that if it's true, the Titans was going to trade King Henry to the Eagles. It would be awesome to see him with Jalen. Listen, that might happen. It might not. I have heard a little rumor, Cindy Reed, that maybe King Henry is going to the Eagles. But if he is going to the Eagles, I think they're not going to show their hand today, 3 or 4 days before the draft. I think this is going to happen the day of the draft, as soon as Roger Goodell starts the draft. And I think the Philadelphia Eagles has that number 10 pick. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, shouts out to Jalen, still being the highest paid player in the NFL history, signing that big $255 million a year, $51 million guaranteed, 100-some signing bonus. You look at Jalen Hurts, you look at Devontae Smith, you look at having probably the top offensive line, you look at having A.J. Brown, and then you insert Derrick Henry. I mean, good luck trying to stop that in the NFC East. I mean, but the NFC East is battle tested. They do have good defenses, but that is going to be dominant. If Jalen Hurts and Derrick Henry do team up, I do think you'll hear it at the last minute, right before the pick. So, that's so funny. So let's go to my, we talked about Gibbs. Let's go to my next topic. We talked about Gibbs. We talked about Bryce. I was going to say that we talked about Bryce being, the Warriors and the Carolina Panthers. Let's stay in the NFL draft. Yeah, we talked about Jahmyr Gibbs, so let's go to the student section while while we wind it down here. Spencer says rumors are like buttholes. Everybody has one. They all started saying the quarterback from Florida is the best pick, Anthony Richardson. I mean, this is that time of the year where people are so caught up in trying to hype up their quarterback. For me, the top two quarterbacks, and I thank you for this point, Spencer. My top two quarterbacks, I mentioned last week where I had previously before last week, I said that my quarterback ranking is Bryce Young and then CJ Stroud. Then I was like, oh, it's a two-horse race for that number one pick. And I felt like last week, if you turn into Football University, I had Bryce Young starting to separate himself from CJ Stroud. And I think, they're becoming a little bit closer, a little bit more balanced. I still think Bryce is going number one, but I'll say it's like, 70-30%, whereas last week it was probably 80-20. I feel like CJ Stroud, the closer we're getting to the draft, whereas Bryce could be the number one pick. I still think it's a lot of fans with CJ Stroud. Maybe CJ Stroud's kind of leveling out, but I still think Bryce is going to be number one. I think he's going to be a Carolina Panther in Charlotte. So shouts out to the Panthers. Shouts out to Bryce Young. I will be trying to get that jersey. I'm a Bryce Young fan, as you can tell. So let's go to the I'm not as high as on Anthony Richardson. He did play 13 games. He has a lot of upside. He has the athletic ability. The potential is there, but I'm not going to draft on potential. I mean, if I needed to, I need to have my starting quarterback already in place, and then I might work on having him as a project. But to be my franchise quarterback right now, I don't need to be based off potential. I needed to be based off of what can you do for me right now and what have you done for me lately. So that's just how I view it. So let's go to let's stay in the student section. Cindy Reed says, I wish that rumor is true. Speaking of rumors in NFL, Aaron Rodgers, they finally got the trade done. He's going to the AFC East, the New York Jets, and he might wear 12. Will Joe Willie name it? Let him retire that jersey and let him have it. Joe, I say no, but I mean, it is Aaron Rodgers. I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan. But anyway, Aaron Rodgers going to the AFC East. How does that affect Tua? These two teams, the Jets playing the Dolphins twice a year. I still think the Dolphins are the better team in the AFC East. Me personally, I think it's the Dolphins. And I think, too, it's maybe, Jets, Bills. But now Aaron Rodgers is there. I still might go Bills with a slight edge. And I got the Patriots being fourth. And when I mentioned the Patriots, I mentioned Mac Jones. Now Mac Jones is kind of the fourth best quarterback. The Patriots are kind of nobody's really talking about them. So it's going to be interesting to see how this Aaron Rodgers trade affects Tua and Mac Jones. I think Tua is up for the challenge. I think Tua is ready. I think he's hungry. And like I said last week, I think it's important that Tua takes the Miami Dolphins to the Super Bowl. He needs to have that jump like Jalen Hurts did last year. A-Rod going to another team without a good offensive line. Talking about Anthony Richardson. William Bryan has a great comment right here. He says, Coach Saban knows what's going on, and he's got this. To mention Coach Saban, I mentioned earlier in the show here at Football University how methodical he has been, how strategic he has been, how incognito he's been with the media, all these things. I told you, I think we need to get Football University shirts that says "Thank you, David Pollack," when Alabama wins this 19th national championship, because I think at that moment when David Pollack, told Saban Georgia's the best quarterback, best program in the country, I think that lit a fire in Coach Saban internally, and he had a long flight from Los Angeles to Tuscaloosa. He was doing recruiting, but I think he was looking at his coaching staff and was like, I need to get rid of Bill O'Brien. I need to get rid of Pete Golden. That way I can get back to being dominant. And he got Tommy Reese and Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele's got the defense flying around, busting people in the mouth. They're physical. They have the right mindset. They're tough. They're enthusiastic. I saw a lot of energy from the team. So it was like seeing a throwback Alabama defense. We have so much depth, and we need to continue to develop that depth. But you look at Tommy Reese, his leadership offensively. Like I said, I think it's important for the players, i.e. the quarterbacks and the receivers, to continue to develop that rapport, that rhythm out on their own. They don't need a coach to tell them. They don't need to wait to 7-on-7 in the summer to be like, oh, let's start throwing. No, they need to be throwing today, at least 2 or 3 times a week with the receivers to continue to build that rapport. It is April? Can you imagine how far along they'll be by July or August by camp still start? So that if our receivers and quarterbacks continue to build that rapport, that rhythm, receivers continue to work on their craft, route running, catching the ball, catching the jug machines, please, 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 please catch the jug machines. If they can do that, that can take our team to the next levels. Let's go to the student section. Matt Spencer says, "Matt, I was talking about Aaron Rodgers going to a bad offensive line. He could get hurt this year." I mean, you look at the the New York Jets. They do have that number 13 pick. I wouldn't be surprised. I think they have a decent offensive line. I mean, I don't know where they're going to go. You look at the Jets, I automatically think of Quentin Williams and Sauce Gardner, C.J. Mosley, that defense they have. But I think with them in that division, I don't know if they're going for another receiver with that 13th pick, or do they try and get a Brian Branch, the most versatile safety in this draft. So I don't know. But listen, they might go offensive line, to your point, Spencer, to really shore up that offensive line for Aaron Rodgers in that AFC East division. Let's stay here in the student section. Let's go to 6-0. He says, 8-day game is just a way for Coach Saban to see who handles pressure best and who execute under pressure too. If he ain't played to show how good the team is. Yeah, I think Coach Saban, I think his biggest statement from what I heard prior to the scrimmage, he said, I want to see who's going to play winning football. And he doesn't care about all the externals. He don't care if you're third string or you 33rd string. What do you do with your opportunity? And are you executing? Are you playing winning football at that position to help the team be successful? So I think we were able to address that. And that's why I said earlier in the show, pump the brakes. It's just a spring game. I know people want to look at all the turnovers and all that stuff. I'm glad to see our defense being so dominant. I think that's good. That's going to help our quarterbacks in that development where they're used to going against that top defense week in and week out in practice. So when they come game time, opposing defense is nothing to them because of the depth, the scheme, the physicality that we play against week in and week out. So, I think it was important. We had a lot of guys. I mentioned the freshmen. They stepped up and played winning football in pressure situations. So, let's go to my next topic. I talked about Gibbs. I talked about Brian Branch. Let's talk about the draft here. I think Bryce is the number 1 pick. I think he is a Carolina Panther. And if Bryce goes number 1, what if D'Amico Ryans and the Houston Texans go Will Anderson instead of C.J. Stroud? I'm telling you now, you will not be able to tell me nothing. I will be bragging how Alabama has the number 1 and the number 2 pick So I know all those Georgia fans in the comments. Listen, I'll be so proud to have Alabama have number 1 and 2 picks. So I think Brian Branch will be the next player coming off the board. I think still Brian Branch sweepstakes starts at pick 10 with the Philadelphia Eagles. If Bijan Robinson is off the board by then, they're talking about maybe a Jalen Carter. I don't know if Jalen Carter will still be there at 10, but if you look at a Brian Branch, they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They could fill in a good void there with Brian Branch. And I mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Gibbs is going to come off the board a little bit earlier, maybe early teens, high 20s. I think you look at teams like the Chiefs or the Buffalo Bills or maybe the Miami Dolphins. I think they have a 51 pick. Maybe they're like, let's trade up and get Jahmyr Gibbs. And could you imagine Jahmyr Gibbs with tools? Listen, it's an arms race in the AFC East. As I mentioned, with Aaron Rodgers coming over to that division, now you have an arms race. I think right now the Dolphins kind of have the lead over the Jets. I think the Jets still need to improve roster-wise, but I think if the Dolphins can address the running game, maybe get a Dalvin Cook or maybe a Barkley or whoever and sure up that offensive line, listen, the sky's the limit for the Miami Dolphins. I do have them winning that division. So let's do rapid fire in the student section. We got Go Dogs. Dogs fans always in Bama comments, always in Bama mentions. So yeah. Speaking of dogs, Stephen Hicks says, I want to see Polly's face after we stump the dog, you know what, out of the UGA month. Y'all shots fired. I don't know what it is about the Bama and Georgia fans. It's so reflective of how these teams are just going at it. It is so funny. So we're going to wrap it up here, but I said, enjoy the draft. Hey, enjoy this weekend. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Football University with me, Matt Caddell. I know we discussed a lot of topics, but I want to say shouts out to all the Alabama players going to get drafted. I wish them great careers. And listen, I hope Bryce, I hope he goes number 1 in the Carolina Panthers, so I can be a new fan for the Panthers. And I'm excited to see what Will Anderson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jordan Battle, even Eli Ricks, Byron Young, where these guys go, because we know the NFLU is the University of Alabama, and the University of Alabama is the NFL. So, and speaking of football, that's what we do here at Football University. Thanks for tuning in again tonight. Let's enjoy this football weekend. Let's enjoy the draft. Let's celebrate our Bama guys, and let's come back next week and discuss it again here at Football University with me, Matt Caddell.